Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Dan Pardo, and this is the 15th episode of Pardo's Turn, my weekly Wednesday web series. Usually I bring on a guest and we sing a song and discuss it, and it's great and we have a good time. Today we're doing something a little different. I have asked you, my audience, to submit some questions to me to answer or weigh in on, and a few of you have, so I will answer them now. The first question comes from Timothy Van Adder. He asks, haven't caught up on all your episodes yet, so not sure if it has been covered, but it'd be cool to see an episode about what made the Golden Age golden. Thanks, Timothy. That's a great question. So what Timothy's referring to is the Golden Age of musical theater, most closely associated with the output of Rodgers and Hammerstein, that is 1943 with Oklahoma through The Sound of Music in 1959. And that's not to say that their careers started there. Obviously, Richard Rodgers had a very prolific songwriting career with Larry Hart, Lorenz Hart, in the 30s, and Oscar Hammerstein, co-created the mother of all musicals, Showboat, with Jerome Kern in 1927. And that's really a landmark piece because it elevated the importance of a strong book at the center of a musical. And I would say that what made the collaboration between Rodgers and Hammerstein special was not only their prolific catalog together, I think it's 11 shows, including some real heavy hitters that you all know and love, but it also perfected the musical theater art form and kind of made a template for all the other successful writing teams to follow. I think it's fair to say that Rodgers and Hammerstein already established the importance of a strong book and a well-written score that's music and lyrics with their previous collaborators prior to 1943, but one thing that really didn't get into full gear until Oklahoma was the opportunity and the importance of dance. And that, of course, is a credit to their amazing visionary choreographer, Agnes DeMille. Now, obviously there was dancing before Oklahoma, but usually it was just for pure entertainment value or to show some kind of specialized skill. It wasn't until Laurie's Dream Ballet where the function of dance changed from a way to entertain to a way to forward the plot and develop character. It was a really innovative moment that changed the course of musical theater history. Their secret recipe, so to speak, really caught on. There's a wonderful array of musical theater writing teams and solo writers from the Golden Age. You have Frank Lesser and Lerner and Lowe, and the short but important collaboration between Adler and Ross, the beginnings of Bach and Harnick, Harvey Schmidt and Tom Jones. And I think all of these young, eager writing teams learned a lot from the success of Rodgers and Hammerstein. And the other thing that I really think defines it as a stylistic period is how Broadway and show tunes kind of contributed to the popular music of the time and not the other way around. In the late 60s with Hair, and then in the 70s with Jesus Christ Superstar, and all these kind of more contemporary rock-infused scores, you really see the influence of outside pop music, beyond Broadway, making its way in, as opposed to the sound of, show tunes, finding its way on the radio waves. I hope that kind of answered your question, Timothy. If not, there are entire books devoted to just the Golden Age of musical theater, so go wild. The next question is from Kate Kramer. She says, I want to know, when you discuss theory things like the meaning behind a certain chord progression, etc., how much of that do you think a great composer plans out in advance, versus how much does it just occur naturally in a great song? To an extent, I think humans are conditioned to hear certain things and interpret them a certain way. We all hear a chord like a C major triad, and it gives, a different emotional response than this chord, or this chord, or this chord. And I think this has been something that's been developed by classical composers for centuries, and the way contemporary songwriters and musical theater songwriters from the Golden Age and beyond kind of capitalize and tap into our musical psyche, so to speak. With that said, I think every writing team and every song is a little bit different. Some songs start with the text, and when the composer takes the words, they can set it in a very deliberate way. Other times, a composer will write a really, melody that they like, or, come across a chord progression that they, really find attractive, and kind of shop around for text that, seems like a good fit. So I was in a master class a couple weeks ago, led by the amazing Andrew Lippa, and he was kind of coaching through Freddie My Love. Now, Freddie My Love, is an effective song in the context of Grease. It's not the most cerebral song, and, he said, our job isn't to know what, these songwriters were thinking. It's to go through the lens of the character and see what he or she is needing, and see if we can pick up any clues from the music that help us to reach that conclusion. So, it is a big mystery. I'm doing all these episodes and trying to, explain them. As a student of music and musical theater, I try and have a working vocabulary of different scales and different chords and different intervals even. If you hear a tritone, like in Maria, historically the tritone was called the devil's interval, and it sensed danger. So I don't think it was an accident that, is all over the score of West Side Story. But, we try and find patterns, trying to connect the dots. That's all we can do. My hope is that maybe one day I'm going to get a composer onto this show, and I'll say, I think you were thinking this, and he or she will say, you're absolutely right, or you're absolutely wrong. It's just trying to empower actors to make choices, because regardless of the original intent, their job is to interpret the music and the lyrics and the book that's been given to them, and give a performance based on their own intuitions and the material at hand. So I hope that answers your question. Alex Gomez asked, I know Cole Porter is mostly talked about for his lyrics, but is there a composition of his you find interesting? I've always liked Night and Day. I like the whole kind of tick-tock motive and how it builds off of that. I also like how in arrangements and subsequent recordings of it, they really latch onto the beat of the tom-tom and kind of do the whole Gene Krupa groove. So it's, part of that is the interpretation of the song, but I think there's enough of it in the bones and in the text to kind of take it a lot of really interesting places. I love the repetition of the melody, like that bum bum ta da dun dun da dun 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 dun, as all the chords are kind of working around it. I like the mediant modulation. Night and day, deep in the heart of me. There's just a lot of really interesting things going on, and a great lyric as always. There were a few requests about do's and don'ts for an audition. Do, be prepared, get sleep, and the audition starts before you even get into the room. The people who serve as monitors are usually either friends or colleagues of the creative team or the casting associates inside the room, and they will report back if you were either being rude to somebody else or if you were, doing something disruptive or unfriendly. Treat everyone in the room as you would your colleagues. It's obviously there's a respect that goes across the table, but you have to feel like you're worthy of their time, or else they're not going to be interested. When you approach the pianist, have your cut clearly marked. I'm not going to weigh in on the whole discussion whether sheet protectors or not sheet protectors are the way to go, but please make sure it's double-sided and your beginning and end is clearly defined with an introduction and an ending. Otherwise, the audition pianist kind of has to guess, and they may guess wrong. I would say have your book clearly organized, or have some kind of way that you can find stuff quickly. A lot of times you'll do a really great job with the song, and then the people behind the table will say, oh, do you have something that either shows your upper range or something that's a little bit more comedic? And you'll be like, oh yeah, let me just find this song, and you're like looking through your book, and then by that time they're looking at their watch and they say, all right, sorry, and you missed an opportunity. Be friendly to the people behind the table, but not too friendly. Unless they want to shake your hand, don't shake their hand, because they might be a germaphobe and then it gets weird, and it also kind of takes up time. I think a mistake that a lot of people make in the room is trying to give 110% and showing everything that you can do, and doing all sorts of weird vocal gymnastics that are uncalled for the music. if you show the people in the audition room everything that you can do, they have nothing else to ask about. It's like a date. You want to give them enough to be interested to invite you back. And if not, you know, it's like, well, that's all they can do. It either fits the bill or it doesn't. So the goal is to build these relationships. Oh, here's another one. Love the song that you choose. Now, maybe you're one of these people who can do everything well. That's great. But we can tell behind the table whether you love singing something or whether you just do it really well. The song selection is a window into your personality. The biggest thing I've learned, though, from my many auditions in the city is that everybody is talented. You know, whether or not you book the job doesn't have to do with your talent. It has to do with whether you fit all the things that they need for that very specific puzzle piece of a role. You know, you might not consider that the track that you want to do also has to understudy another track. And maybe that person's older, maybe that person's younger. Or maybe that person also has to dance or tumble or do something that doesn't seem readily apparent on the casting breakdown. It could be a question of we already have 3 brunettes in the cast and it would be visually confusing to have another. Or we've already cast that person and there's a height differential that's going to be awkward if we don't get someone who's at least 5'5". So the measure of the success of the audition isn't necessarily booking it. We all want to book it. But it's whether or not you did your best, whether you came in prepared, whether you made a good impression with the people behind the table, because maybe they won't cast you for that thing, but they'll remember you, and they'll advocate for you in the room the next time. Oh yeah, this person came in for us last week, she wasn't right for this, but she would be totally great for that. So if you do your best, reward yourself, go get some Shake Shack or whatever, and slog on, because as my mentor Michael O'Flaherty said, you don't audition to get your next job, auditioning is your job. So similar to the last question, Emily Levan wanted to know, how do you get an agent if you don't get one at your college showcase? So just to make sure everyone's on the same page, a lot of times when actors go through a college program, it ends with a showcase, a presentation, where the university invites representation agents in the city, either in New York or LA if they do more movie and commercial stuff, and basically to shop around young talent and say, I want to represent that person, I want to get a piece of that pie. Quick disclaimer, this is not exactly my area of expertise, but I have been in a number of master classes or different settings where either an agent or a casting director has been there and kind of talked about the subject, so I'll pass along what at least I understand to be true. First of all, getting an agent is great. A lot of times they help get you in the room, they'll advocate for you in ways that other people cannot. Agents may give you some good advice regarding headshots or your resume, and you know, it's good to have people in your corner, by all means. But it's not an end-all be-all. There are a lot of casting directors who, you know, have relationships with agents who want to showcase their talent, and they know the people and they just don't fit the bill. More important than getting representation is really doing your work, representing yourself well, getting in front of a lot of creative teams and casting directors, and building those relationships. I happen to work for a company called The Growing Studio that offers a 5-week class that culminates in an agent showcase. That's no guarantee that you'll get representation at the end, but the preparation and the work that we do is really vital, and it gets you some face time, which is better than none. Also, be a present member in this community. A lot of times the networking doesn't necessarily happen, you know, in one of these pay-to-plays. It's when you see a piece of theater and you see a friend with their agent and you get that nice introduction that happens organically. So that's it. Let me know down in the comments if you liked this episode or whether you want to get the guest stars back. I promise we'll have someone for next week. It's been really crazy around here, but I did want to have an opportunity to respond and interact with my viewers. Thank you so much for continuing to tune in. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next Wednesday on Pardo's Turn. Bye! Down deep inside of me, and this torment will never be through, till I spend my life making love to you day and night, night and day. Like the beat, beat, beat of a tom-tom, in the jungle shadows fall, I'm gonna love you.
night and day.